Hello everyone, Johnny Cooper here, and it's been over a year since the Walten Files' first 2 episodes released. I remember seeing Squimpus McGrimpus recommending the series after her FNAF VHS finished, and I'm thinking, hey, this won't be scary. I always wanted to make a video on the Walten Files, and now is a perfect time to do it, seeing the amount of meaty lore we got in the 3rd episode. I already know a lot of you guys are absolutely confused on what takes place on what in the Walten Files, and so today we will go over the Walten Files timeline. The timeline will be from dates we saw in the video, however, in order to fill in some gaps, we'll try to speculate and fill it in. Of course, we are only going over Walten Files 1 through 3. Spin-off titles like The Mysterious House and Buzu's Ghost are not canon like Martin Wall said, so those have no place in the timeline. Let's get started. The very earliest date we receive in the Walten Files thus far is the year Jenny Letterson being born, that of 1956, making her 26 by the time of the 3rd episode. Despite these characters not having a pinpoint date, it's very obvious that Jack Walten, Rosemary, Felix Kranken, and Linda Kranken were born way before Jenny, considering she is 4 years older than Sophie Walten, so they were still kids when these 4 adults were busy pumping out more children. Charles and Susan Woodings are born before Jenny, since Susan was head engineer of Bunny Smiles Inc., which requires years for a bachelor's degree, while Sophie was just 14 years old and Jenny was 18 at the time, so they haven't attended college yet for a degree like that. Also, this was in Martin Wall's casting calls, so this will make her in her 30s through late 40s. For Charles, I mean, look at him. He looks to be in his late 20s, 30s, or even 40s. But I do think they are younger than Jack, Rose, Felix, and Linda, but older than Sophie and Jenny. Now we have characters like Brian Stiles, Ashley Parks, and the 2 other BSI technicians. Ashley and her friends sound very young, but since they are technicians, which also requires a degree, we'll say they're older than Sophie and Jenny by at least a few years. Plus, this other edition of the Walten Files 2 puts them in a 19 through 25 year range, which during the year they do the relocate project, Jenny will be 22. Plus, no offense to Jenny, but she's a hotel worker, so she's still most likely in college trying to get a good degree, with Sophie for a better job. Now for Brian Stiles, he works as a facility caretaker and sounds like someone in his late 20s, early 30s, so he's most likely older than the 2 characters. However, I'm not so sure about this one, so it's up for you guys to decide, but I'll put him right behind Jenny just by a bit. In 1958, 2 college students, Jack Walten and Felix Kranken, get the same idea of animatronic performers during college. The thing that I'm unsure of is if this is what made them become friends or they were already close friends before. I'd assume that Martin Walls imagined them in their very early 20s when he wrote them in college, having the Bonsbergers idea. So I'm assuming both of these characters were born in their 1930s, so we'll assume that their wives are the same thing. 2 years later, and Sophie Walten is born in 1960 by Jack and Rosemary. Oh man, Jack for sure was a wild animal during college parties. Troll face. In May 15, 1962, Ed Walten is born. Oh yeah, just keep them Waltens coming, Jack. In October 30th, 1964, Felix Kranken seems to have experienced a dramatic moment that led to him drinking much more than usual. Of course, marking the beginning of Felix's alcoholism, which will later on lead to kick off the events of the series. As Linda states on her Bond notepad/diary, Felix has been acting very weird lately. He's been drinking more than usual. I am very worried about him. I don't know what to do. He came home at 4 a.m. He was crying. He seemed very unstable and stressed. I don't know what to do. A lot of stuff is redacted, so we're unable to see what else she wrote down, just like her other entries. I feel like we will see later on what Felix saw or did to cause him to break down and start drinking. My guess is that he either killed someone accidentally or had to, or Maybe he was cheating, or Felix and Jack got themselves mixed up into some nasty business, which will explain the 7-year gap between coming up with the idea and finally doing something about it. They have to pay back money to the cartel, mafia, or whoever they got mixed up with, so they brought back the idea they had in college to get them their money and even more, or to just simply launder it. Now you may be saying, but Johnny, it took them 9 more years for them to actually open the restaurant. Well, I mean, maybe the pitch that Felix and Jack gave to them sounded like a fantastic idea to them, that they were willing to give them 10 years to make it happen. Who knows, especially since doing a mascot type restaurant would create a franchise of more merchandise, restaurants, and games, which means more money will be made. I know, it sounds very far-fetched, but Martin does love Breaking Bad, so I won't be surprised if he took inspiration from the show somehow, especially during the release of episode 3. On August 22, 1965, Molly Walten was born, the last child to be born by Jack and Rosemary. In August 23, 1965, Linda states in her notebook that she moved in with Felix last week, and that Jack and Felix have been pitching the restaurant idea to Cyberfun Tech, who are interested on the project. In April 15, 1967, Felix Kranken records a company greeting, where he introduces himself and Jack to their company, A Bunny Smiles, stating how their company isn't very big, just like their budget, but all that they need is a hope, and that's all that matters for the Kranken. In December 26, 1970, Linda wrote more in her notebook, stating that Jack and Felix built a gray rabbit doll for Ed and Molly for Christmas, where Molly named it a Rocket. This will mean he was given to the kids on December 25, the day before Linda wrote in her notebook. She also states that Felix continues drinking, especially during Christmas. Linda states that he's a good person, but doesn't want to address his problems. It's getting worse and worse, but doesn't try to change it, but feels bad about it. During some point in 1972, a prototype endoskeleton is built by Cyberfun Tech. Since this is a prototype, and in December 10th, 1972, Felix records December message, where he gives all his BSI employees a small farewell message, wishing them a happy Christmas and a happy New Year's, along with Felix stating how it's crazy how far they made it, from the Cyberfun Tech deal in 1965 to the Bob's Burgers project, which will be 1972, I'd assume, considering that's the final name of the restaurant. As Felix says these things, the video shows us a picture of the Bond animatronic behind the curtains with the coming soon sign and the address in the bottom. This seems to be a picture they took in real life that year and put it in a poster. The following image is the finished Boozoo animatronic. Since this recording was made in 1972 and the images that went along with what Felix was saying, this will mean that Cyberfun Tech ended up making the final version of the endoskeleton along with the costumes the same year as the prototype. In January 30th, 1973, Linda continues to write how Felix drinking has worsened to the point where he stays up in the warehouse for the sole purpose of drinking, or goes to places only to drink. She also states how he's so submerged with their project, that of course being the Bob's Burgers restaurant, and that Felix doesn't realize how much that's damaging him and herself as well. Now, I'm assuming that they have a deadline for the restaurant and Felix is trying his best to finish everything before then, to have a smooth launch, which is a thing that happens to a lot of developers or workers who work in the gaming industry, something Martin Walsh himself has experienced when making the Welcome to Bob's Burgers video game, which will later be cancelled and made into an analog horror series on YouTube. So I'm not surprised if this part of the story was inspired by that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we enter the year where shit hits the fan. The year the restaurant opens and the murders happens. Starting with a call on May 2nd, 1974, 15:23, which will translate to 3:23 p.m. on a 12-hour clock, between Felix and Jack Walten, where Jack asks Felix to do him one simple favor: pick up Ed and Molly to a school event that night and take them home after, since Jack needs to stay in the warehouse to finish paperwork and Rose has has to take Sophie to the dentist, leaving Jack's best friend to pick them up. What can go wrong, right? He's also asked to pick them up by 5 p.m. and get them home by 9 p.m. Felix accepts, which makes Jack happy and calls him a lifesaver. Oh, Jack. Linda will also write for the final time in her notebook the following. Dear Felix, by the time you're reading this, I shouldn't be home. I know you're confused, cause I'm confused too. What you said to me last week hurt me a lot, but it opened my eyes. Hopefully this opens your eyes too. Our relationship isn't healthy. It never was. I'm leaving Brighton, sorry if I pronounced it wrong guys, Brighton this morning. You're in the warehouse with Jack and the others as I'm writing this. By the time you're reading this, I'll already be in hurricane. And no, not the storm guys. I know you're busy today doing Jack a favor. Something related to a school party, I can't remember, but please go there when you have the time. As to me, I'll try to build my own life while I still can. You should do that too. I love you. Goodbye, Linda. And then we see in red pen by Felix Kranken saying, I am sorry, Linda. I am so sorry. That will be the end of Felix and Linda's relationship, as she will then divorce Felix Kranken, going by Linda Thompson, as seen in the page where she crosses out Kranken at the beginning of her diary. In her final page, she also reminds Felix of Jack's party favor. Oh boy, today will only get worse for Felix Kranken. Now with Linda's final note and Jack's phone call, we shall be able to put everything together with the way the events went down that day. However, I was able to find some errors when trying to puzzle them in. I feel like this is most likely an error by Martin Walls' end, but I won't want to fully confirm it. Linda in her note says Felix and Jack are in the warehouse as she's writing this, and by the time he reads it, she'll already be in hurricane. But in the same note, she talks about the call by Jack, which is made at 3:23 p.m. that same day, in which Jack states that he has to finish doing paperwork at the warehouse. That will give Felix 1 hour and 37 minutes from the time the call was placed to the hour he has to pick them up. But the note makes it seem like it was made in the morning by the phrase, I'm leaving Brighton this morning, which will make it impossible for her to write down Jack's favor, since that won't happen till hours later at 3:23 p.m. and the phrase, I know you are busy doing Jack a favor today, something related to a party, I can't remember, but please go there when you have the time. Which, to remind you again, he only has 1 hour and 37 minutes to pick them up. So the statement makes it seem like the call happened in the morning and Felix has plenty of hours left till he has to pick them up. But let's see if I can still try to puzzle this in, even with that small time frame. If this right here will be route A. Let's say Felix told her about the call at 3:23 p.m. He then has to go to the warehouse where Jack is at, which he'll only be there for less than 1 hour and 37 minutes before he has to pick the kids up, which will explain this part of the note where she's writing how Felix is at the warehouse with Jack and others. Maybe Felix has to get something from Jack in order to pick up the kids, which is a thing some schools do, but I feel like Jack will mention that in the call, or maybe he picks up something else in the warehouse. Linda finishes her note and begins packing. When she writes this morning, maybe she meant the morning of May 3rd, once it hits midnight or something in that line, since it will technically be morning and she'd be staying awake. Mind you, all this will happen in 1 hour and 37 minutes, so now it's close to 5 p.m. He gets to the school and starts drinking before the kids meet him to get picked up, like how Bunny Farm shows us. However, he won't be drinking because his wife left him. He doesn't know this yet. But okay, let's say Martin Walls did do an oopsie. The following is route B. Jack calls Felix in the morning, Felix tells her or Linda overhears it. Felix goes to work with Jack a few hours later. Linda writes her note, which again will explain the part of how she's writing this when Jack and Felix are in the warehouse, and the part, I know you were busy doing Jack a favor, something related to a party I can't remember, but please go there when you have time, will make a whole lot more sense, since Felix will have more hours instead of 1 hour and 37 minutes. The morning part will also factor in more easily if the call was made around that time. She'd have time to pack up and leave that same morning/day. Then by the same time Felix gets home, he's able to see the note, but Linda is now long gone. He sees a reminder of Jack's favor and then goes to pick up the kids at 5 p.m. in which they see him drinking, possibly because of his wife leaving him for good. However, part of me thinks Martin Walls didn't do a mistake because he specifically put 15:23, which again will translate to 3:23 p.m. on a 12-hour clock. This is route C, which I just came up with when making route A and route B. Jack calls Felix when they were both in the warehouse. I didn't think of this since I thought Jack will just come up to Felix in person since they are in the same place. But he was probably busy doing paperwork as he said and decided to call his office instead. Of course the call will still be made at 3:23 p.m. like it said in the video. Felix then calls his wife about this, unknowingly knowing that his wife will leave him short after. Linda then writes the note and leaves. However, she doesn't leave in the morning like she says, since she won't know about the call that Felix told her at 3:23 p.m. unless she really thinks 3:23 p.m. is still morning, or she packs up and goes to a hotel after she writes her note and leaves at 12 a.m. later that day, which will technically make it morning somewhat. Felix comes home before picking up the kids and sees a letter. This makes him drink, or he doesn't get home and go straight to pick up the kids, but drinks because he always just drinks. My assumption is that he was super drunk that night because he read that note. So you can either take route A, which will correlate more with the specific time Mr. Walls gave us, or route B, the one that makes a bit more sense but the time of the call is a poopsie, or route C, which I think is the best one. Now act 2 of the same day, May 2nd, 1974, 17:20, which translates to 5 p.m. in a 12-hour clock, meaning 1 hour and 37 minutes have passed plus 20 minutes. Felix is late. We see Ed and Molly getting ready for the school party, but Molly can't find her gray rabbit doll, Rocket. Luckily, she's able to find it by the time Felix picks them up. It's now 17:56 p.m. 36 minutes have passed as we see Felix driving them to the party. It's now 21:37, translating to 9:37 p.m. as we see Sophie playing as Bond in the events of what happened during the party. Rocket tells her to follow them as they lead her to Ed and Molly. We cut back to them where they were previously trying to find Rocket, which they did again. Now we see them trying to look for Felix within the school where they find them in a bar? What? Why does an elementary school have a fucking bar? What the fuck? Unless when they went to the drinking zone, it was meant to separate the locations, like, you know, they couldn't find them in school, and knowing that Felix always drinks, they went outside the bar that might have been right next to the school, which is still dangerous, or who knows, maybe the school just has a drinking place for the teachers. The kids tell him that he shouldn't be drinking, but Felix denies it and replies with, "It's okay, I'm just feeling a little dizzy. It's getting very late. Your parents are getting worried. Let's get..." Act 3. Now it's 21:53, translating to 9:53 p.m. 16 minutes after the party minigame, we now see Felix driving Ed and Molly home, where they have one final conversation. Molly asks again if he's been drinking, to which he states no, he's just feeling dizzy. Ed noticed that he's speeding a bit, and he puts it off by saying that he just wants to get them home quickly since his parents are worried. He says once more that he's not feeling great and just wants to go to bed. Molly understands, knowing that it wasn't one of his best days and that everything will be okay. They all notice the red flags going off everywhere, but Molly still thought everything was gonna be okay. Instead of the text filling in with what Molly said, it's replaced with "it's all your fault" as Felix crashes the car, killing Ed and Molly. The bad ending screen plays and where it displays the text "you crashed the car, you kill them." preceded by screams of Felix as he realizes that he killed Ed and Molly. Felix then records guilty with his tape recorder shortly after the crash. He says the last time he used it was the same conditions as he is right now. He finally addresses his alcoholism and that he has a major problem after so long of keeping it within him, something we saw his ex-wife state in her diary. Felix states that the drinking makes him forget things, like the first time he got drunk. He realizes that it's why he carries the recorder with him to help him remember things much better when he plays them back. He thinks Ed and Molly will be okay, however he knows that they're not and is terrified of what he's gonna tell Jack. He then states he's gonna be devastated, that's why I buried them. Just the idea of Jack seeing what happened to them. He also mentions that Jack is his best friend and that he will never do that to him, to show that he's not a cold murderer. That's why Felix panicked and buried them next to the incident in St. Juana's forest to save himself from seeing the look on Jack's face when he sees the corpses of his children all done by his best friend. Felix then states that he doesn't remember where exactly in the forest he buried them. The restaurant opens next month and he doesn't know what to do now, but then says everything is gonna be fine. Showbear and the bunny farm practically says the same thing said by Felix. Ed and Molly didn't go home that night, he buried them here, he was too scared as he shows the spots of their burials right next to Rocket, but they found a way eventually, as we see the spirits of Ed and Molly go inside Rocket, basically showing that they possess the doll now. It's safe to assume that Felix left Rocket there to leave evidence of the crime. Felix's phone has 25 new messages, all of them from Jack, as it's been 3 hours since he told Felix to drop off Ed and Molly. He asks what happened to them and demands Felix to tell him if something did. Since nobody has been able to get in contact with Felix, Jack angrily asks him,
I've been trying to contact you all night. I've been calling everyone for you. Just what the hell is wrong with you? 3 hours you didn't call. I asked you to do one simple favor for me. I need to know where are they.
And that is the end of May 2nd, 1974, the worst day of Felix's life, but it will only get worse for everybody. Jack Walten goes missing in June 11th, 1974. There are some theories I have with Jack's disappearance. One goes back to the nasty business theory, where Jack and Felix got involved into some bad shit with the mafia or cartel and used their old idea of Bond's Burgers as a way to launder or make them money. Since Felix is shown to be a coward, he tells these men what happened and that Jack might become an issue, so they execute him in the restaurant and stuffed him inside the Bond suit. Another theory, which is a common one, is that Felix himself killed Jack to hide the evidence that he murdered his 2 children, since he'd think he's the only one who knows. But Jack did state in the voicemail that he called everyone for you, meaning that he most likely called Felix's wife, relatives, or close friends about what happened. So Felix will be a suspect if that's the case, I'd assume. Then again, a lot of people in real life get away with things despite there being so much evidence, so this might be the case, and the incident does take place in the 70s, so stuff like this slips up. Another theory is that Felix lied to Jack and told him that he never saw the children when he was picking them up, meaning that they ran away or got abducted by someone else. And the reason why he didn't pick up the phone is because he was trying to find them himself. This steers the blame from him to the fake kidnapper, which leads to Jack being suicidal and eventually killing himself on June 11th, which makes more sense since he does go missing after a month after his child's disappearance. If Felix wanted to clean the evidence, he'd have to kill him on June 12th or around that time range. Or instead of Jack being suicidal, he starts to think that Felix killed them and is covering it up after weeks of no evidence of a kidnapper, which we then go back to the first 2 theories. Felix kills Jack, or the cartel/mafia do that for him and stuff him inside the Bond suit. It's also pretty obvious that Jack is not actually missing, but is dead and inside Bond, possessing the killer animatronic. Evidence that backs this up is when Brian Sells, the protagonist of the first video, goes into the facility and gets killed. He says, "He thought I was her," referring to Sophie Walten, since we know practically everyone in the Walten family except Sophie possesses in an animatronic suit. There are also a lot of images of Jack throughout the series of him being associated with the Bond character, even his wife hearing his name, which turns out to be Bond, which we'll talk about in a bit. A footage of Lucky You is made the same day that Jack was killed that basically foreshadows what's to come, where we see text saying things like, "I made them beautiful, I don't know how, I didn't even mean to, but I did. They tried to talk to us through analog," and then things like, "They will be heard, they're beautiful, and that they will see Sophie soon." I think this implies that Jack is accidentally killing them but making them into the way he was made, and to him it's beautiful, and that they want Sophie to join them, since she is the last Walten to not be beautiful. Then we move on with the first tape of the series, the one from the very first episode, Bunny Smiles Incorporated Technical Support, a introductory tape for new employees who applied for technical support and maintenance on Bond's burgers, where we then see Bond, Shaw, Buzu, and Banny performing on stage. The narrator explains to us the tasks of the job, which is cleaning, robot maintenance and repair, and learning how to use the BSI technology. Felix and Jack give a message talking about how money and ratings aren't their priority, but that having a wonderful experience while working with us is, with the final words of the narrator being that Bond's Burgers will open in a few weeks, which is why it fits in between Jack's disappearance and Bond's opening. And in June 20th, 1974, Bond's Burgers finally opens after 16 years of it just being an idea of Felix and Jack during college. Felix also makes a document where he forges Jack's signature on the day of the restaurant's opening, despite him being missing, which backs up the theory that Felix has something to do with Jack's killing. On June 30th, 1974, Bond's Burgers gets their first birthday party, that of Jeremy Simmons. That same day, Susan Woodings will record her third audio log, with the first two tapes unknown. In the audio log, she will say that she stayed behind to clean the place up as the party finished 1 hour ago. She states how it's been a strange week, especially since the restaurant opened despite Jack Walten being missing for weeks before its opening. Rosemary comes around daily to the restaurant to ask around if Jack's been here. Felix also seems worried too, Susan says. She talks about how the party went smooth and that since she's a head engineer of Bunny Smiles and the one who basically built the animatronics, she noticed weird things in the stage and in the audio of the animatronics. She also noticed something off about Bond. His limbs weren't moving properly as they looked odd and stiff, mainly his right arm, which is most likely the arm he uses to attack. She takes Bond backstage to see if everything is okay and says how she's the only one left since Chris clocked out a few hours ago and that Felix didn't even bother to show up. She then says she'll leave and close the restaurant when she's finished, which will sure not take long. We then cut to the minigame where Susan is seen as a sprite character. As Sophie plays her, she picks up the wrench and goes over to Bond to fix him. However, Bond attacks her and, won't you know it, he does it with his right arm. We then see a stretched out face of Susan as her face fades into Banny, basically revealing that she possesses the Banny animatronic. Also, the stretched out face goes with one of the Walten Files theme tropes, beautiful, in which Bond attacks the person and mortifies their face to make them quote-unquote beautiful. There's also an image in-game that reveals what happened to Susan after she got attacked, where we see her body slumped over in a corner. I am still alive, but I can't move, and I'm having trouble breathing. And my stomach feels weird, which suggests that Bond stabbed her stomach or slashed it open, morphed her face, all while keeping her alive, unintended, causing her to have trouble breathing and making her stomach feel weird, as she says. On July 14th, 1974, Charles, whose job is unknown at the moment, but perhaps he could be a normal customer who got caught in the crossfire, goes missing and possibly murdered that same day, most likely by Bond and then stuffed inside a Buzu, as seen by how his stretched out bloodied face morphs into Buzu's animatronic face. In Bunny Farm, he states how he can't remember his face, and by the way Bond killed him, it seems that he ripped his lips off, leaving his teeth visible and stabbing him, considering he's heavily breathing. On July 19th, 1974, Rosemary visits the restaurant once again, looking for Jack. She hears someone tell her, "I know where he is, Rosie, follow me," presumably Jack speaking through Bond to lure her in. Where she enters the backstage, Bond says, "You are broken. I will fix you and make you beautiful," as he then attacks and violently dismembers Rose in the corner as we see blood splatter through the walls. Where Bond then puts her body parts inside Shaw, where Rose will possess the animatronic from now on. Shadow Man will enter the backstage and see the whole thing happen. It's currently unknown who the Shadow Man is, but many speculate it could be Felix, or that it could be Sophie who experienced it, which is why she takes the pills. We see this picture of Bond with last shows before closure 07/10/1974 through the 19th of the same month, showing that the same day that Rose was murdered was the last day the animatronics ever performed. On July 20th, 1974, Bond's Burgers will close for good, with Rosemary's death having something to do with the restaurant closing. The police must have investigated and seen the bloodied mess everywhere, going through the suits and seeing the corpses inside. The restaurant didn't even last a month, and an investigation like this has to be the reason why the shop had to close down. On October 31, 1974, Halloween, we see a picture of the abandoned Bond's Burgers restaurant with a sign saying "Condemned," with the cardboard of a Bond figure still being inside. On December 10th, 1974, the K9 BSI storage facility bunker was made or completed as a company project to store all the valuable items from the closed for good Bond's Burgers restaurant. All props, animatronics, and arcades were moved, inspected, and secured inside this bunker, located deep down in St. Juana's forest, the same place where Ed and Molly were killed. On January 23, 1975, the animatronics were moved inside the K9 storage facility, with a storage K9 document being made the same day by Felix. He will also make a relocate document around 1975. In that same year, Bunny Farm by Bunny Smile starts development. 3 years later, we're now in July 2nd, 1978, where the first tape of the relocate project is made by Bunny Smiles Incorporated, which is when the second episode of the Walten Files begins, where the narrator talks about how the relocation project was a backup plan by Felix, which was created after the closure of the restaurant in 1974, and how it took them 4 years of legal paperwork to complete. He talks about how the animatronics were moved into St. Juana's forage facility, and how during that 4-year gap between the closure of 1974 and 1978, they got a good amount of business openings such as books, merchandise, and animated movies, and even a TV show. Most likely because the designs and ideas of the characters were too good to pass up by the companies. A VHS tape of the disappearance of Jack Walten is shown upon the piles of movies, which can either be a documentary film investigating his disappearance, or just the reoccurring Walten Files themed trope where we see a lot of Jack Walten being missing stuff splattered throughout the first 3 installments. The popularity that the characters got through the year gap gave Felix Kranken the idea of restoring and reprogramming the animatronics of Bond's Burgers in the K9 facility with the purpose of relocating them into a new restaurant that will open in the future, where the narrator shows us a picture of a new Bond's Burgers restaurant opening in 1982, which is like 4 years after this tape is made. He then congratulates Felix for his genius idea and how he has a big heart before he's cut off mid-sentence by a creepy picture of Jack Walten, to show us that Felix has a connection to his death once again. On July 19th, 1978, technical support for the K9 facility is made, aka Tape 3, where Shaw explains to the viewer to wear the Bunny Smiles uniform and ID, where it cuts to the Brian Stell's ID card. Little Bond, serving as the example of the new employee, is helped out by Shaw as she checks that he has everything he needs for the project before it cuts to Jack coming out of Bond's backpack. Shaw shows us the room of the facility, where we see Shadow Man for a brief second. We then see a vague part of what happened to Rose that day, where she was murdered and stuffed inside Shaw. It's now July 12th, 1978, where the 4th tape is recorded by the 3 BSI technicians, Hillary B, Ashley P, and Kevin W, where they spend 3 days inside the facility to reprogram the animatronics. We see a heavily damaged Bond and Shaw, where they talk about fixing them, but one of them states that it is broken beyond repair, and that the project is unsuccessful later on, which, yeah, I mean, Look at them. Just make fucking new ones. I mean, come on. It shouldn't cost that much. Especially considering how much money they made in that merchandise and TV show and movies. The three get into sleeping bags as they sleep for the night. Ashley talks about the key the company gave them and decides to wake up in the middle of the night to investigate what it is, and believes that it can save the relocation project. Oh my god, Ashley. She couldn't wait until the morning to see what it was with her two other partners. A possible theory is that Felix sent them to their deaths just to see if the spirits are still inside the animatronic suits, if he was the shadow man who experienced the backstage incident. Anyways, she finds the back rooms where she sees a bunch of unused animatronics, endoskeletons, and such. We then see Rocket hanging from the ceiling and Buzu. She finds a cassette tape and inserts it on the most creepiest animatronic in the building, Billy the Clown. The birthday song starts playing with the names of Jack, Susan, Charles, Rosemary, and Sophie as well. All victims who were stuffed inside the suits, even in order except for Sophie, who's still alive but could be foreshadowing. The lights turn off as Bond appears in front of Ashley, who was then brutally murdered and made beautiful. There is a brief image that shows what happens to Ashley, which says, "They left the next day. They thought Ashley left early, but she was in the back doors, screaming as much as she could, but no one heard the screams. The following days, the caretakers will complain about an awful smell coming from the back doors. Company decided to shut down the facility until new advice. The relocate project was unsuccessful. Ashley is still there, but she's not screaming anymore. She saw something she wasn't supposed to see, and now she's beautiful, and it goes on and on and on." And it can be said that the spin-off title, The Mysterious House, represents that of Ashley's incident, in that Ashley represents the purple wolf, Tammy, who saw something she wasn't supposed to see, and the pumpkin rabbit is supposed to be Bond, who brutally murders her and makes her beautiful, along with the other victims representing the other deaths that, Bond/Pumpkin Rabbit killed. And I guess the other spin-off, Buzu's Ghost, represents Felix and his guilt to killing Ed and Molly, and in which the spin-off, Buzu kills one of his workers. Ashley now possesses the Billy animatronic. I want to state how Billy the Clown is not shown to be with the four main performers during the launch of Bond's Burgers, instead being a scrapped animatronic that was sent to the facility along with other scrapped animatronics. However, during the 4-year gap where Felix got tons of business deals, he brought back some of the scrapped characters, one of them being Billy, who was seen in lots of cartoons and the arcade game, but the animatronic itself was never used, which makes him the oddball of the four main performers. On August 13th, 1978, a reprogramming phase, aka the second tape, is made, where it shows us the process of the reprogramming the animatronics, particularly the facial expressions, where we see the engineer move Banny's facial parts, which states that the results shall be the same for the other animatronics. We then see Banny's face fade into Susan, showing us that there's a human inside the suit, where it cuts to Banny trying to escape as a speech-to-text voice says the mighty rabbit needs to get out. The rabbit is starving, but she can't. Banny looks at the viewer crying as the voice repeats, "The rabbit is starving, the rabbit is starving, the rabbit is starving." I think this event goes back to June 30th, 1974, the day Susan was attacked. The sprite is practically Susan trying to escape the restaurant and is shown that she is starving, considering she's still alive and that it's most likely been days since she's been bleeding inside the suit. Poor Susan, oh my god, one of the most brutal deaths along with Rosemary. Now entering 1979, a Bond's Super Sleepover animation short is made by Sunlight Animation, aka Tape 2. And now we enter back into the first Walten Files video again, where we see Bond having a sleepover with Shaw, Billy, and Buzu, where the cartoon is all innocent-like before the creepy shit starts happening, like Jack appearing sometimes, especially in a tape which which goes back to that documentary thing I talk about, Bond is woken up by a strange sound and goes to see what it is. He sees a Jack missing poster where he picks up a lighter as his character is replaced by Sophie holding the lighter in a security uniform with a Bond animatronic behind her. I think this animation is supposed to represent what's to come, where Sophie takes on a job at Bond's Burgers and investigates her father/family's disappearance, and in this short, Bond represents her. And in October of 1982, a few test bunny farm machines are distributed around Brighton? I don't know, the place where the series takes place. One of the arcade machines was sent to Entferton Hotel, where Sophie and Jenny are currently staying at. In October 10th, 1982, Brian Sells, a brand new facility caretaker, records the final tape where he's seen driving into the forest at night to the K9 facility. He mentions that the reason for him recording is because the company needs it for some type of archive for the work history, and proceeds to say that he's been driving for 20 minutes and can find the place. He sadly does. He mentions how Chris told him the place hasn't been working since so-and-so, which I presume might be the same Chris who worked with Susan decades ago. Anyways, he enters the facility where he mentions how it smells like a sewer and talks about the relocate project, which is still ongoing. He sees a destroyed Bond and uses a diagnostic control to move its body parts. He then starts moving on its own. Brian panics and runs away from the facility, or instead of parking the car close to the place and driving out of there quickly, he runs on foot through the dark forest where he says, "What is that thing?" before he is knocked out and killed, as Bond appears all bloodied and gets close to the camera. Brian's corpse is shown all modified, with the text saying, "I can't feel anything, he thought I was her." Going back to the topic of Jack being Bond and is looking for Sophie, the last Walten, he thought Brian was her due to his broken facial recognition software, as many presume. It is speculated that Bond is now roaming in the forest as Brian has set him free. Oh my god, Brian, what have you done? Now we enter the current events of the series, that of the Walten Files 3 Bunny Farm, where in October 15, 1982, Jenny Letterson, age 26, introduces her girlfriend Sophie Walten, age 22, to the arcade machine Bunny Farm, where the machine is located in the hotel they're currently staying at, which Jenny works at, and it is possible that they stay there for free because of that. Jenny played the game and noticed creepy shit going on. She knew Sophie loved that type of stuff and showed her the arcade. They both commentate for a bit, talking about the disappearance of Ashley and even Brian, which in the timeline happened 5 days ago with the Brian incident. Jenny then has to go to do some essays while Sophie plays the game alone at night. She plays through a bit and sees creepy shit going on and stops playing for the night. The next day, however, she continues. Through her playthrough, she sees how her mother and siblings died, the death of some BSI workers, along with the truth of what happened that night when Felix crashed the car, and some backstory on him and Jack. Sophie says that she took prescribed medication pills to make her suppress all the memories that caused her trauma after the incident that happened in 1974, which is why she doesn't remember until now. And in October 16, 1982, Sophie Walten remembers everything. Now it's safe to assume that she'll take on a job at BSI of some kind to investigate the events that happened, and with the teaser that Walls put on Twitter, she'll most likely visit her old house for clues. Martin confirmed that in 1983, Fredbear's Pizzeria will open, which will later be rebranded to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. However, it is a completely normal restaurant with no incidents like no killings, no bites, or spring lock accidents, and that Fazbear Entertainment has no knowledge of Bunny Smiles. So Bond has no connection to Bonnie, as some people theorize, but it's cool to see that these two are coexisting, with one of them being the killing murder type of thing and the other one just being a normal, chill restaurant with animatronics. Little multiverse thing happening. Hopefully the TVA doesn't come in and change everything. Then we jump back into 2020. Yes folks, we're going all the way back to the present, decades later, where in the bios of the Walten Files videos, we are introduced to the unseen character, creator, Anthony, who uploads the Walten Files videos as he seemed to have a liking to the historical preservation, where for the first upload he mentions how he tried to get as much info as he could but only got these VHS tapes. For the second, he contacted people via forums that have info of the company. He also mentions how he takes care of his father. He found the relocation tapes and mentioned how an existing BSI member told him that these were private and only a few had them. When the company vanished in 1983, the tapes were destroyed and banned. He was able to find them when he was on a hiking trip and found a box filled with them, with only 2 working. The others, he's currently fixing them. He also mentions how he bought some from a guy who found them in a lost and found in a coffee shop. The seller says the coffee shop owner told him that the one who had them was just keeping them for emotional reasons. Those tapes are the ones in bunny form, where he states the footage was from the arcade machine sent from the Enfert Hotel. The 2 girls playing the game seem to have lived there. The particular thing about these machines was that all the footage from the game was recorded and then revised by BSI technicians to see if the game was ready to be published. This was one of them and quite possibly the only footage remaining of this game. The footage itself was extremely corrupted, however, and it took me weeks to be able to piece everything together with the help of a friend of mine. This made me thinking that either Sophie or Jenny kept those 2 tapes before they eventually dumped it into the lost and found around 2020, decades later after playing Bunny Farm, where they are practically in their 50s by now. So it could be either one of them that are still alive and left the footage, or it's just a random BSI employee. But I wonder why these random BSI employees got these 2 tapes and kept them for emotional reasons, since they have nothing associated with these tapes unless it is specifically Sophie and Jenny. Now you may be saying, but Johnny, how do you know Anthony is from 2020? Well, in Walten Files 2's bio, he says how he's staying home so COVID doesn't fuck him over and to take care. And we all know that that year, COVID arose and caused the global pandemic, making Anthony and the tape uploads in 2020 and onward. So we're currently experiencing this ARG in real time, folks, and that is practically it for the Walten Files timeline, where I explain the events that happened throughout the first 3 installments and put them in a cohesive timeline. Let me know if you guys would love for me to do more Walten Files videos. Martin Walls has stated that the first 3 installments are season 1A, which is now finished, and that's basically what this video covered, and that the next 3 uploads will be season 1B and season 2A, and season 2B will happen, with that being it, which I'll make sure to do a part 2 when season 1B happens, and so on and so forth. And hopefully once everything is finished, I can just edit all 4 videos and mix it into one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Fuck, man, that's so fucking long.